welcome to She's At It Again. Today our recipe is going to be sausage balls, and this is an appetizer, but if you don't want to use it as an appetizer and you want to pour it over, say like pasta or rice, if you need gluten-free, then it's perfectly easy to do that. So let's go in there, because the first thing we want to do is make our sausage. We're not going to go with ready-made sausage. We're going to make our own sausage, but just wait. You'll see how easy this is. I've shown this in other videos, but it's worth showing you again because it's ridiculously simple and it's beyond that as far as good and good for you. No sugar in it either. So let's go in the kitchen as we make some fancy sausage balls. All right, so the first thing we want to do is put our dry ingredients in a bowl. We're only going to use a pound of sausage for the recipe, but my package of ground pork is about 1 2/3 pounds. So what we're going to do is we're going to add enough spices to it for the 1 2/3 pound, but then just take out 1 pound of it. So you'll see what we're doing in just a bit. First thing we want to do is put about 3 tablespoons, a little over 3 tablespoons of dried sage, just sage, in a bowl. Now, I'm a lover of the sage. I love a lot of sage in my sausage, so I may go a little overboard, but that's okay. For 1 pound of sausage, it calls for 1 teaspoon of salt, so we're going to use about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And this is just pink Himalayan salt. For 1 pound of sausage, it's 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, and this is about 3/4 of a teaspoon of pepper that I ground a while ago, just so you wouldn't have to watch me grind pepper. This is marjoram. You can see the name on it, my fancy label. And the original recipe for 1 pound calls for 1/2 teaspoon, so we're going to go with about 3/4 of a teaspoon of marjoram. And if you don't have marjoram, don't feel like a failure, because I think honestly, this is probably one of the only things I use it in, but I make sausage quite a bit, so I keep it on hand. But the nice thing about it is you can go in stores now and buy this in bulk, so you can only just buy, like, I mean, literally, if you want to buy 1 teaspoon of it, you can do that. Next thing is cayenne. For 1 pound, you use 1/8 of a teaspoon, so I'm going to put in close to 1/4 of a teaspoon, but not quite. And then for 1 pound of ground pork, you would use just a pinch of chili flakes, so I'm going to use a big pinch of dried chili flakes. That's what these look like. It's the things you see in a pizza restaurant to sprinkle on the pizza. We're just going to stir this together, and I'm going to add a little bit of water to it just to hydrate it and get the salt dissolved a little bit, so when we add our ground pork to it, it'll be nice and wet, like a paste. And if you hear the scratching in the background, it's my doggies. They're right down there, and they think it's necessary to scratch the bedding before they lay down. I have no idea why. It's like they're digging their way to China or something. Okay, so I probably added about maybe 1.5 teaspoons of water to this. So just to get it wet, I'll show you what this looks like. Kind of looks like mulch in the yard or something. All right, now we're going to get our ground pork and add that to it. And this is what it looks like. And I took this out of the freezer yesterday, so it thawed in my refrigerator overnight. You can try to do this with a spoon or a spatula, but honestly, just know you're probably going to wind up sticking your hands down in it and working with it. one of the advantages, other than there's no sugar in this, there's no monosodium glutamate in this, there's no preservatives in this, is that not only do you know what your ingredients are, you can actually pronounce them and there's something you have in your kitchen. But when you cook this up, normally when I buy, or used to buy, just a store brand or a name brand breakfast sausage in a 1 pound roll, there was almost more grease than there was sausage left. The patties would shrink up really tiny. This does not. Just know ahead of time, you might have to oil your skillet if you have a skillet that has a tendency to stick. This is not one of those sausages that has more fat added to it just to make more product, to make more money. This is ground pork that is actually has very little fat to it. So when you fry it up, it's going to be surprisingly lean, and you won't have all that grease floating in the skillet. Okay, I think we have this pretty much blended up. This is what it looks like. And now I'm going to wash my hands. We're going to go over and we're going to start frying this up into little sausage balls in our iron skillet. So got to get my hands cleaned up. I got one clean hand, one greasy hand. So we'll be right back. All right, I've removed all but 1 pound of sausage from the bowl. And I have my skillet heating up on the big burner. And I have a cookie dough scoop. I'm going to see how the meatballs work with that, or the sausage balls. Now you can do this part in the oven too. You could bake these off, but nah, I'm not going to bake them today. They probably keep a better rounded shape if they're baked, but we're just going to go with frying them in a skillet. And I have my casserole dish over here to put these in once they fry up. Okay, see how pretty these fry up? And you can see there is, I'm hoping you can see that, maybe not. Let's see if I can get you closer here. You can see there is pretty much no fat in the bottom of this skillet. And that's with a pound of sausage. Had you done this with store-bought sausage, pre-made sausage, it would be floating in grease. So just let you know, I'm not tricking when I say this does not have a lot of fat to it. But it has gobs of flavor to it. All right, I've turned my burner off, so I'm just going to let the skillet cool down just a tiny bit. I've got to get my ingredients together. We're going to be making a sauce to put over this, and then we will top it with some cheese and make it really yummy. And then this will be baked off in the oven. This can be served as appetizers, just in that state. Once you take it out of the oven, it's hot. You'll put toothpicks in each one. But what we're going to do is we're going to serve it either over rice or pasta. It just depends on what I find in the pantry. I mean, I have both, but we'll see what we're wanting at that time. All right, we're just going to transfer these over to this bowl or this casserole dish now. Just make sure your casserole dish is big enough to accommodate the sausage balls plus any topping that you'll have, which would equal to maybe 2.5 cups. Well, 2.5 extra cups. So sausage balls plus 2.5 extra cups. All right, there we go. All right, I'm gonna get my ingredients together for our sauce to put on these, and then we'll be back. Okay, we're back. I had to answer the door in the meantime, so that was a good time for somebody to knock on my door or ring my doorbell because I turned my skillet off and I went out to cut some green onions that's gonna go in this too. First thing we wanna do is, I have my skillet heating back up, and I need to put about 3 tablespoons of butter in the skillet. So, see, I mark it with my knife into tablespoons. Actually, I mark it when I unwrap it to put in this. All right, these are my famous frozen mushrooms. I buy organic fresh mushrooms when they're marked down at our local store, well, a couple of towns away. And no matter how many containers I have, I contact my friends and say, do you need any mushrooms? But anyway, I buy normally what they have, come home and chop them in big chunks because I can in turn use this for soups just like that, or chop them smaller to use in something else. All right, we are gonna need to what equals about 2 fresh mushrooms. And you don't have to cook these, and you don't wash them. You don't get these wet. You just brush them with a really, really soft toothbrush, just designated for these, and just brush the soil off of them because it's kind of some kind of growing mix. But brush the soil off of them and then chop them up, slice them up, put them in the freezer, just like this. Don't wash them, don't do anything else to them. So somebody was asking me about that earlier on the channel. And it comes in so handy to have them like that. All right, I'm going to cut these up just a little bit smaller than what they are now. The nice thing about frozen mushrooms too is even though there's a lot of moisture to them, they really don't stick together that badly when you freeze them in those bags like that. They pull apart pretty easily. I mean, there's still ice on these and I'm still chopping them up. I have a doggie under my feet right here. She stands right here and watches me. All right, we'll put our mushrooms in there. And about a half teaspoon of salt. Got to thinking about this, and I think what I might do, instead of serving this over rice or pasta, I'm going to serve it over mashed potatoes. We're going to have this in 2 days. But again, this is actually an appetizer recipe. We also need about 1 to 2 tablespoons of cream cheese. So you can tell where I've cut both ends of this off. Okay, so we're going to put a piece about like that on there. I've decided to make this gluten-free, since I'll be serving it over mashed potatoes anyway, and that's gluten-free. So if somebody happens to come and eat with us and they need gluten-free, then we'll have that. You can't turn something full of gluten into gluten-free, but most people who don't have an issue with gluten don't mind it being gluten-free. So I'm going to replace the all-purpose flour in this with organic brown rice flour. And it works basically the same, other than just a slight texture difference. If you eat it right away, you can actually see the little grains in there. There's not a crunch or anything offensive like that. But whereas flour is super smooth, rice flour is not quite as smooth, and you can see a little bit of a bumpy texture. But as far as the taste, no difference whatsoever. And if it's going to be put in the refrigerator and then baked later anyway, that texture variance is going to be non-existent. We're going to put about 3 tablespoons of brown rice flour in here. If you're using all-purpose flour, same amount, 3 tablespoons. And we're just going to make a roux with this, which is spelled R-O-U-X. Not like kangaroo, but a roux as in a fat, a flour, and a liquid. If you're using all-purpose flour, you want to brown it just a little bit in the skillet. If you're using a brown rice flour, you're not going to be able to see the browning as much, so just go with it as long as you know it's hot all the way through. This is just a little over a cup of whole milk. You can see how that rice flour absorbs the liquid so readily. So I'm just adding a little bit at a time, just because of that. I want it to be smooth, I don't want it to be lumpy. Okay, this is my bouquet of green onions that I just went out and cut. Because when I buy store-bought organic green onions, you have the white part at the end down here, and once I use all the green part, I take the white part and I go plunk it into the ground out there, and the soil's great and it grows green onions all over again. So I kind of perpetually have green onions going all the time. So don't ever throw away the white parts of your onions, particularly if you have a garden or a flower pot or something that has good soil in it. Just go put the white part down in there. Don't bother with putting it in water. That doesn't necessarily do anything. It just makes stinky water. But if you'll put it in the soil, it will start growing the green part out of it again, and you'll have those on hand. Okay, I'm going to turn that down just a little bit. I don't want it to cook too much faster than what I'm going for. We're also going to put in 1/4 of a teaspoon of garlic powder. So basically what you have here is a homemade cream of mushroom soup with some garlic powder added to it. That's all this is. I was at a gathering this past weekend for a graduation for a friend of ours, and one of the ladies there, I started talking to her. Apparently, I've known her for years. I just couldn't remember her face. But started talking to her. She's super sweet. I mean, like over the top sweet. And we started talking about something. And she said something about, I don't know if you can make a homemade cream of mushroom soup. And I said, actually, you can. I'll just send you the recipe. So I pulled my phone out. She said, are you kidding me? I love it. I love, love, love it when people learn that you can do something that is better and it's better for you, and they're going to run with it. She said, I'm going to go home and make this. I'm going to make this week. So I am so excited. So Carol, I'm not kidding. Here it is. All right, we're going to put our green onions in there. I need to chop the rest of them too. The recipe calls for, and this is in my cookbook from years ago, so I guess I knew what I was talking about. It calls for about 4 green onions, the tops only. So I went out there and cut what I thought would be about 4 green onion tops. I've turned my burner off. I don't know, remember if I told you that or not. So it's just sitting there on the hot burner, not continually cooking on purpose. All right, we'll put the rest of those in there. Actually, I'm going to reserve a little bit for the top. That'll make it look more interesting on the top since we're putting it over mashed potatoes later. All right, we're going to cool this off with some sour cream. Let me get a spatula. Going to put about 8 ounces of sour cream in there. And I'm just going to eyeball it. That looks like 8 ounces to me. And our last ingredient, I shredded some cheddar. We're going to put about a cup of the cheddar in there, then we'll put some on the top. I'm not going to use all this, I don't think. Maybe. Make sure everybody can see it. Turn it this way so I can actually hold it with my hand, maybe. It's awkward because there's no way I'd ever turn the skillet this way if I were just doing it by myself. I'll turn around in a minute where I can actually clean it out, but for right now I want you to see it going in there. This is not a 9 by 13 pan. This is more like a, maybe 9 by 11, maybe, I'm guessing. I don't know. So it's a little bit smaller than a 9 by 13. All right, now let's put a little bit more cheese on there. And then we'll put the rest of our green onions on there. Get off of there. All right. you can see what this looks like. And as far as tasting, we'll see when we get the mashed potatoes done. So hopefully I'll remember to video it when we serve this. All right, that's done. Hope you give this a try. Recipe will be in the description of this. Ooh, it's the end of the day. I'm feeling warm, but I've been outside most of the day. That's to be expected, I guess. All right, thanks for joining us, guys, and we look forward to sharing something again with you real soon. Hopefully I'll remember to video the final product. So see ya.